Okay, welcome back. Once again, my name is Libertas, and this is going to be posted on my website, libertyman.online, libertyman.online. We're just building this platform right now, and there's a few things you can go there and tool around and enjoy, but this whole entire series explains why Liberty Man. So we're about halfway finished. And as I promised, we are going to go and we're going to look at the first international treaty that was done in America, and it was done by the Mayflower Pilgrims within the first year of their settlement. As we see here, the front piece of law, which would be right underneath his feet here, is the treaty with the Indians. Now, this treaty was helped to be established by an Indian named Squanto. So in order to get to this point, we have to go back and look at the big picture of how this came to be. To start with, in the spring of the year, right as the snow was beginning to thaw out, and it was just a horrible winter for the Pilgrims. Over half of the, or nearly half of the people died. I showed you that only 4 of the mothers remained, and they had some teenage girls, but they were unwed. And it was really brutal. Only 6 of the original 17 signers of the Declaration of the Mayflower Compact were left alive. And walking out of the woods, and they haven't. Here's another thing before I get there. They had built their little village. They had built some houses. But they had built a stockade, which doubled as their church or meeting house. Downstairs, they had the meeting house. It was made out of some pretty sturdy logs, but it also had shooting ports, smaller than windows, where a rifle or musketeer could shoot. And on the top of it, there were 4 cannons mounted up there. So, I mean, they brought some serious artillery with them off the Mayflower. So when they came for protection, they came well armed. And this was part of their personal militia. Okay, so not only did they have their opponents outgunned, which would have been the Indians, but they also had better armor, and they had artillery, which was something that maybe the Indians had never experienced unless somebody off a ship had fired a cannon or something. Anyway, this Indian comes walking out of the woods wearing almost nothing but a G-string, a little bitty loincloth. It's still cold. But anyway, he's almost naked, and he comes walking out, and he walks up like he owns the place, and he waves and says, "Hello, Englishman," in English. Go figure, right? So this guy was named Samoset, and he visits with him, and there's a guy on the Mayflower. His name was Stephen Hopkins. And all this has to do with the treaty. Stephen Hopkins started out at Jamestown. He was on a ship on his way to Jamestown that got shipwrecked in Bermuda, and they ended up they took the ship apart and made sailboats out of it and sailed the rest of the way to Jamestown. And he was the what you would call the secretary to the pastor there at Jamestown. And so if you look at the painting of Pocahontas's baptism in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol, you'll see a guy standing in the front left, and he's holding the church flag and the ministerial flag of the Church of England. And so that's Stephen Hopkins. So Stephen Hopkins and his family were on the Mayflower. And he was basically wanting to bring his family back to Virginia. And he had every intention of landing where they were supposed to be, in the northern parts of Virginia, instead of New England. And in this area they landed, it was already designated as New England, long time before. But nonetheless, Stephen Hopkins was there. So Samoset stayed overnight at his house, at Stephen Hopkins' house, but they both acted as interpreters, so that everybody could visit and have a good conversation. So, because Stephen Hopkins was familiar with the Indian languages, although not exactly the same, in Virginia, he knew enough about their customs and their words to where he could communicate. So you had the two of these guys trying to communicate together, but Samoset told William Bradford, he says, I'm going to go back to my camp and I'm going to bring my king here. His name's Massasoit, but I'm also going to bring a guy over here that speaks a lot better English than I do, and he's also more familiar with Christianity than I am. He goes, although I know a little bit about Christianity, this guy knows a lot more, and we can talk on better terms. So think about that. What are the chances of not only an Indian being able to speak English, the first one that they encounter directly just comes walking up out of the woods like he owns the place, and he says, welcome, Englishmen. If that's not a miracle, then I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, it was recorded as one of the first miracles of America. And now with Squanto, a number of years earlier, and both of these guys were translators with fishermen and stuff. But with Squanto, he was captured and taken as a slave back over to Europe. Well, they ended up selling him in Morocco, and some priests bought him at the slave auction. And they taught him Christianity, and more along the Catholic side of things, but still they took him under their wings and taught him Christianity to the best of their abilities. Maybe not as much Bible as the Puritans may have, but still, nonetheless, he was familiar with Christianity. They worked out a way to get him over to England because they knew about the Virginia Company and the Merchant Adventure Company that were trying to get settlers to go back to America or get a fishing vessel to take them back to his homeland, because those vessels were going back and forth, and there was pretty much the British controlled all of it. So they wanted to help him get back to his home. As if by magic and coincidentally, while Squanto was gone all of this time, his whole entire village was wiped out by a disease, more than likely either smallpox or syphilis. But when the Pilgrims got off at Plymouth, what became the Plymouth colony, they found 20 acres of land that was already tilled. They found clay pots full of corn. They called maize, Indian maize. But when they found that corn, they also said to each other, what is this? And that is the Hebrew word for what is this is manna. That Indian corn ended up saving Europe from starvation. Not only the Pilgrims, but it also became a big cash crop for the Americans. And it also saved Europe from starving because of what they were able to produce with it, the nutrition value of it, and the livestock value of it. Anyway, so there's another miracle with the corn. But Massasoit came with them, and they start discussing this treaty here that they ended up signing. And so I'm going around to give you the background of why Massasoit wanted to become unified with these people right off the bat, and why they were so eager to let the Pilgrims have that land without contest. Number one, they considered the land cursed, and if you want it, you're free to have it because no Indian is going to live there. But number two, we're your nearest, closest neighbor, and we don't want you messing with us. And here's why. This is recorded in Cotton Mather's History of Plymouth, and his book is called Magnalia Christi Americana. And he says here, he records here, and this is for the peace treaty, but among the many causes to be assigned for it, for the treaty, was this: it was afterwards by them confessed that upon the arrival of the English in these parts, the Indians employed their sorcerers, whom they called Powahs, like Balaam, to curse them, and let loose their demons upon them, to shipwreck them, to distract them, to poison them, or in any way to ruin them. All the noted Powahs in the country spent 3 days together in diabolical conjurations to obtain the assistance of the devils against the settlement of these our English. So all the witch doctors is what we would call them today. They got together, and you see them dancing around the fire, hooting and hollering, and they're probably taking some type of herb that would make them hallucinate so that they could get information from the spirit world. And then they would come back and they would prophesy what the spirits told them, much the same way as the oracles with the Romans and the Greeks and all the pagans back in the day. Same type of thing. They would consult the spirit world for prophecies and information. So that's what they're doing here. But the devils at length, the devils told the Powahs, here's your sign. But the devils at length acknowledged unto them, the Powahs, that they could not hinder those people from their becoming the owners and masters of the country. Whereupon the Indians resolved upon a good correspondence with our newcomers, and God convincing them that there was no enchantment or divination against such a people. This very strange disposition of things was extremely advantageous to our distressed planners. And who sees not herein the special providence of God, who disposes all? If that didn't get your attention, I don't know what more I can give to you. They get there, they find 20 acres of cleared land, not a single soul. All winter long, not a single Indian molested them. They see them up in the hills observing them and stuff like that in a distance, but they never attacked them. They never did anything. The first Indian that comes out of the woods says, "Welcome, Englishmen. I'm going to bring another Indian over here that knows Christianity and speaks better English, and he's going to bring our king, and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk." Well, Samoset knew about all this stuff. And so when they get together and they come over there, Samoset comes back with Sconto and Massasoit, and they don't record how many of his Indians came with him, but I'm sure he didn't travel with just the two of them, and he might have, I don't know. But nonetheless, Stephen Hopkins is there, and he looks up and he says, "Oh my gosh, I know that Indian." Squanto recognizes Stephen Hopkins because they had become acquainted in England when Stephen Hopkins was trying to catch a ride back over here through the Merchant Adventures Company, and Squanto was over there, and he was being wined and dined and carried around in the social circles of, here's this Indian that can speak English, so he's like a big parlor game with everybody. So they were acquainted with each other. So what's the chances of that happening? You got an Indian that speaks English and is familiar with Christianity. You got an Englishman that comes from Jamestown and knows the bad things and the good things to do about how to get along with the Indians, and he can help translate. The Indians tell him, you can have this land for free because of what happened. And then they tell him this tale that our gods told us, in essence, that your God is bigger than all of our gods put together, and that if we don't make a peace treaty with y'all are going to wipe us off the planet. So where do we go from here, Mr. Bradford? I can't make this stuff up if I wanted to. I don't think there's a single novelist in the world that can come up with a story like this, because it's true. This is the truth. And yet we haven't been taught this in our schools. We're taught all about Thanksgiving and how the Americans exploited the Indians and took over their land and destroyed their land. And it was the Indians that came to the Americans and said, look, we want to become friends with y'all because our gods told us that your God's bigger than our God. Think about that. Put that in your peace pipe and smoke it. So anyway, let's get back to the narrative of what Bradford said about it. So this is talking about his meeting with Massasoit. Their great Sagamore, Massasoit, was hard by with Quadakina, his brother, and all their men. Our messenger made a speech unto him that King James saluted him. That messenger would be Mr. Hopkins, Stephen Hopkins. Our messenger made a speech unto him that King James saluted him with words of love and peace, and did accept of him as his friend and ally, and that our governor desired to see him and to truck with him, which is trade, and to confirm peace with him as his next neighbor, his closest neighbor. And here is the agreement that they made with each other. And it's well, I mean, there's the whole thing right there, just this little bit of a page. So first international peace treaty, but the wisdom in this and the simplicity of it is mind-boggling. If we could just do this with any other country, things would be a whole lot easier. Anyway, number one, neither he, this is Bradford talking to Massasoit, so he would be Massasoit, that neither he nor any of his should injure or do hurt to any of our people, the pilgrims. And if any of his did hurt any of ours, he should send the offender that we might punish him. So if you injure our people, then you will be tried by our laws in our court. That if any of our tools were taken away when our people were at work, he should cause them to be restored. And if ours did any harm to any of his, we would do the like to them. Equal justice under the law. If you steal from us, we want you to return it. If we find out that some of ours stole from you, we're going to return it. And then we're going to punish them accordingly. If any did unjustly war against him, we would aid him. If any did war against us, he should aid us. So if either side gets attacked, the other side's going to ally up with them and go and help them fight off their enemies. So they made a military pact there as well as a commercial pact and a civil pact. Clause 5. He should send to his neighbor confederates to certify them of this, that they might not wrong us, but might be likewise comprised in the condition of peace. He asked Massasoit if he would go tell the neighboring tribes about our compact and invite them to come and join us. So they expanded it to anybody else that wanted to join their league of friendship and mutual defense agreement. That they might not wrong us, but might be likewise comprised in the conditions of peace. Number 6, that when their men came to us, they should leave their bows and arrows behind them, as we should do our pieces when we came to them. So when you get together to discuss things, whether it's a social visit or a government visit or any type of visit, you leave your weapons at the border or outside of town, whichever it may be. You don't bring your weapons to the table. That's done peaceably, cordially, and mutually. And so that is what the treaty with the Indians. But there was one thing about the statute that we didn't talk about, and that's this one here, mercy. And I wanted to save this for last because it deals with Squanto. Squanto started letting ego get to him. He thought he had more power than he did, and he wanted a little piece of the pie for himself, so to speak. But it says here, but by the former passages and other things of like nature, they began to see that Squanto sought his own ends and played his own game by putting the Indians in fear and drawing gifts from them to enrich himself, making them believe he could stir up war against whom he wanted and make peace for whom he wanted. So he's playing both ends of the fiddle here, and he's skimming off the top, so to speak. And of course, the Indians didn't like that, and they wanted to kill him, which probably would have been burning in a bonfire for them. But Bradford said, no, that, as bad as it is, he's very valuable to us. And also the crime doesn't merit capital punishment. And so Massasoit listened to the reasoning behind it, and it does not recorded what punishment they gave Squanto, but they did indeed agree to not have him killed. And so with that in mind, mercy came into play so that Squanto was spared the rightful death sentence according to the treaty on the Indian side, but mercy was granted him by, I guess you might call it, the defense attorney from the Pilgrim side. And so that was the first recorded judicial order of mercy. And we would call that today probation. You're released on probation. We're not going to put you in jail. You know what you did, you deserve, and you earned this, but we're going to let you go and give you mercy in this. But if you make the same mistake again, then you're going to go back to jail and might even get a harsher sentence if you break your agreement. So anyway, we see all of that here in the statute of law and with justice, mercy, and the treaty with the Indians. So with that, we are going to come back and look at the next tablet on the statue called the One Small Candle. So we'll see you then.